First of all, welcome everyone to another live of the.
Welcome.
It's good to have you here. You've got myself, Depesh, you've got Shiv from Lifestyle Property, and we are going to be. I'm super excited about today because we're actually going to be talking to you and showing you the exact process, step by step, of what you need to consider when getting yourself a buy-to-let property. Okay, so not just a case of, hey, this is like a property you should look at, and these are the types of tenants. We're actually going to show you specifically our 26-step process of what we go through when we find you a property, when we find our clients a property. So super excited to have you here today. If you are live on Facebook right now, do drop a comment, or if you're watching the replay, drop a comment, let us know that you're here, let us know that you're excited about what we're going to be revealing for you today. And Shiv, I'm going to pass it over to you
Yeah.
because I think you've got some slides prepared as well.
Yeah. Well, the first thing to say, Dipesh, is that there's so many people. Investing in property is not a natural thing. It's not something that we would do. So, what do I mean by that? A natural thing is you buy a house. A natural thing is you live in the house. You buy a car. A natural thing is potentially you go to university, or you do some education. A natural thing might be to have kids. These are all natural things. Investing in property is something that we're never taught how to do, and it's not natural. And so, for a lot of people, what they think is, if I want to buy, for example, a 100 grand property, now most people know, oh, I can get a mortgage. They don't know how much mortgage. They don't know whether they can actually get the mortgage. They don't know how the mortgage is calculated, but they know they can get a mortgage, and they know also they can probably get 75% mortgages that most people know about. So in the buy-to-let world, 25% deposit, 75% mortgage. So most people think 100 grand house, I need 25 grand, I'm done. That's all I need to buy this house. And there's so much more involved. And we did one of the lives a couple of weeks ago. We talked about all of those steps that are involved, all of the additional costs. Actually, some of them are hidden costs of investing in property. And if you want to know about the hidden costs of investing in property, then go back and have a look at the live that we did from a couple of weeks ago. Today, what we're going to talk about is the hidden steps involved with investing in property. Because people think, oh, you go to the estate agent, you tell them that you want a house, they give you a house, as if estate agents just give you houses, but yeah, they give you a house, and you say, perfect, I'll have that house, and you pay them the money, and the next day you have your house and you rent it out. Isn't that it? Absolutely not. So let me take you through these slides that I've prepared. And I say I prepared. This is actually a slide deck that we created back in 2017, and it was a slide deck to help our clients understand the steps that were required in investing in property. Because people were saying, I don't understand what you actually do. And so this is where this slide deck came from. So you'll see it's got the old branding on it and whatever, but this is what we actually do. And actually, Dipesh, you, I'm sure, will tell the audience here that whenever you speak to people as well, like, you actually look at this slide deck, you've used this slide deck before, and you go, oh my God, I didn't know myself that there was all these hundreds of steps involved, 26 steps involved.
100%. Like when I first found out about what lifestyle property did, and when I think it goes very much in alignment with what you just said, which is I had the assumption that it is a simple case of finding a house that you like the look of, seeing if it has good rental potential, and then you have a conversation with the estate agent, almost like the same way you think it might happen when you go and buy your own home.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the mindset that most people have. And when I saw what lifestyle property people was all about, when I saw this actual slide deck, it kind of blew my mind in terms of what work actually goes into the process of getting someone not just a buy-to-let property, but more specifically an investment that's going to return dividends for years to come, if not generations to come. And I think that's the
Yeah.
difference and the mindset shift of having someone who's looking for a buy-to-let property versus someone who's looking to invest and create generational wealth.
Yeah, and a really good point that you said yesterday, which is just reminded me of a conversation that I saw on one of our client WhatsApp groups yesterday. Was a client said, when we did the initial decision in principle, I'll take you through the steps in a second, but when we did the initial decision in principle for the mortgage, I thought I was going to get a mortgage of 5%. But now it's been, 2 or 3 months, and we found a property, and we're now going through the mortgage process, and it's going to be 5.5%. It's going to be a bit more, basically. And obviously, if the mortgage is a bit more, it means that the rental profit is going to be less. Now, arguably, I think off the top of my head, the rental profit is, I don't know, let's say £500 less. I think on a £4,500 rental profit, £500 less, it's like 1/9 of the equation. So it's an amount, 500 over 4,500. However, what this client isn't seeing, and I think it's really important to see, like you said about generational wealth, is yes, you're losing £500 on rental profit. And so their question was their question was which mortgage option should I go for? But I thought their question was going to be, should I do this? Should I bother doing this? And that would have been a silly question completely, because you don't not do something because it's going to now cost you £500 more to do, because you're not doing it for today. You're doing it for 20 years from now. And all of that income that you're going to get over the next 20 years, all of the changes that are going to happen over the next 20 years, both positive and negative. For example, rent's going to increase. That's going to increase your profitability. Mortgage rates might decrease. That might increase your profitability. Mortgage rates might increase. That might decrease your profitability. We might get a Labour government. That might decrease your profitability, or maybe even increase your profitability. And in fact, Dipesh, remind me, the next Facebook Live that we should do, it should be, what is the impact of a Labour government? I think it's going to be a really good one that people want to know. But let's focus on this one. Like I said, this is a 20-year plan that we're trying to create, and you're going to get income every single one of those 20 years. And most importantly, you're going to get capital growth. And the reason why I say most importantly is because people don't realize that 65 to 85% of the overall return over, say, a 10 or 20-year period comes from the capital growth. So whilst we're making £500 less on, and sorry, just put this into perspective, £4,500, for example, a year on rental profit. But if it's a £150,000 property and we're making, say, 10% on it to make the maths easy, you're making £15,000 on the capital growth a year. Now, of course, it's not going to be every single year. Some years it will grow by more, some years it will grow by less. But on average, it's 15 grand a year. So you've got 4.5 grand on this side, 15 grand on this side. If you're making £500 less over here, people say, I don't know if I really want to do it because I'm making £500 less now. You say, but you're making 15 grand. In fact, we had a client that said, actually, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait for a year because I think the mortgage interest rates are going to be lower next year. Yeah. And I said, well, how much lower do you think they're going to be? Because ultimately, you're going to, let's say, make £500 or £1,000 more profit, but you'll have lost out on £15,000 worth of capital growth that you will have made in that period, in that year. So something taken to place. Anyway, let me get into this slide deck. So this is our model.
Just before you continue, just to kind of remind everyone, we are live. I can see you guys are live watching as well. So as we're going through this process, please feel free to drop a comment and ask a question, and we will aim to answer that question while we're live on the session as well. So Shiv, take it away. And if you are live, do say hi in the comments. Shiv, go for it.
Perfect. So I said our model is pretty simple, actually, and most people try to complicate these things. And I think when it comes to investing in property, I always say, like, simple is the way you want to go. All the exciting stuff, all the exciting strategies that there are to invest in properties, in my experience, and I've done lots of these strategies, they don't actually make a whole bunch of money. They just take a whole bunch of your time. And so if you're looking to actually make generational wealth, create generational wealth, make actual return, then this simplest way of doing it is probably the best. This is our simple strategy. We create a strategy. What are we trying to do with the amount of money that you have and what you're trying to achieve? How many properties? Where do we buy them? How much do we spend on them? How much can the overall cost be? Who we're going to rent them to? All of that kind of stuff. Now, of course, in Lifestyle Property People, we have a specific strategy based in specific cities. And that's because we know that in those cities, we think we're going to get the best amount of capital growth and the best amount of rental growth. And so overall return is going to be highest in those areas. One of the things that we do when we look at the capital growth is we look at those cities and we start to find out where are the redevelopment plans for the council. Where is the regeneration going to be happening? And we buy in those areas. So what that means is that even if nothing happens in that city, because there's regeneration, your house prices will go up. So we create a strategy. That's the first thing to do. What we're going to buy, how much we're going to buy it for, how many bedrooms, what refurb we're going to do, who we're going to rent it to, are we going to use an agent, which agent are we going to use, all of that stuff. Are we going to use a mortgage, which mortgage, how many years are we going to fix the mortgage for, is it going to be a variable mortgage, all of this kind of stuff. The second thing we do is we go and source the property. And the source of the property is obviously quite an important part because for most people, they say, I just go to the estate agent and I say, I want a 2-bedroom house, and they give you a 2-bedroom house. That's not how it works, unfortunately. What normally happens is you cannot offer on a property until you view the property. And for a lot of our clients who are based in the Southeast or based abroad as expats, they can't invest in the northern property market, which is, we know, is that's where the best returns are. Certainly over the next 20 years, that's where the best returns are going to be. So therefore, we need to go and view these properties. So what we do is we get phone calls from estate agents, or the estate agent will email us because we've got really good relationships now. And they'll say, there's a really great property, here it is. I haven't put it on the market yet. I'm going to put it on the market tomorrow, but do you want to go and have a look at it? So we'll say, yeah, we want to go and have a look at it. And we'll send our viewer, they'll go along to the property, they'll go and have a look at the property, probably before it's been on the market. They'll probably meet the vendor, they'll have a chat, why are you selling it, what's the thing here? And here's the important bit. They'll be able to get a feeling or an understanding from the agent or from the vendor, what's the number they're looking for here? And when we talk about charging for sourcing, it's because when we buy a house from an estate agent and it's on for £150,000, you go in and say, £150,000, here's my money. Or £145,000, here's my money. What we do is we do the negotiation to find out, well, how much are we ready to sell this property for? And what is wrong with this property that we can use to be able to negotiate the price of that property to make sure we get it for the best possible price. So that means that when we buy it, we've already got it at a good price. We source a property, then we purchase the property. Now, again, purchasing process, people think, oh, actually, you just employ a solicitor and you purchase it. Unfortunately, it's not that quick. You've got to have a solicitor. You've got to have a mortgage broker. You've got to have an insurance broker. You've got to have a surveyor. You've got to have a refurb team. All of these people are necessary for the purchase process. And we actually internally call it the due diligence process, not the purchase process, because during that process of purchase, which is usually between 3 and 4 months, it's a long process. We do all the due diligence that we need to do so that by the time we get to the end of that process, we're saying, do we really want to buy this house? Now that we know everything about the house, do we really want to buy it? And it's important to note that we're not saying we're going to buy it and then we buy it on that day. We say we want to buy it, and then it takes us 4 months to do the due diligence, and then we make a decision about whether we want to buy it. That's how these things work, based on all the pros and cons of that we've discovered during the due diligence process. And just very briefly, in fact, I'll take you through on the next slide. The next stage then is the refurb. We need to go and get the refurb done. And of course, we've got to find the people, vet them, and get them to sort that out. And then we've got to rent the property out. So there's a whole 5-step process here that needs to be done. And you can see it's actually pretty simple. It's not really that hard when you look at it like this. There is a 6th step, but I don't want to get into it in too much detail. But ultimately, the 6th step here, once you've rented the property out, especially in today's market, if we can buy it at a good price and we can add some value by doing a bit of refurb, it means at the end of once we've rented the property out, and whether you do this immediately or you do this 2 years in or 5 years in, you can refinance the property. And if anyone has a call with you, Dipesh, on our strategy calls, they'll know you can refinance the property and you can take the equity out from the property. And actually, the way that our model works is in 5 years' time, you refinance the property, you take the equity out from the property, you take your rental return that you've got in your bank account, you add these two things together, and it means you have enough money to buy another property without putting any additional money in. And this is when you talk about creating generational wealth, this is how you do it. People think, oh, well, if I'm going to have to buy 10 properties and each one is 70 grand, I'm going to need 700 grand. I don't have 700 grand. You don't need 700 grand. You just need to get started, because every 5 years or so, depending on the market, you're going to have enough money, enough funds to be able to buy another property or double your portfolio without putting any additional money in. So if you start with 3, which is what a lot of our clients do, they start with 3, three will set you back somewhere around 200 grand in total funds required. In 5 or 6 years' time, you'll be able to refinance that portfolio and buy another 3. In 10 years' time, so 5 years after that 5 years, you're going to be able to refinance those 3 plus 3, those 6, to get another 6. So by the end of 10 years, you'll have 12. Cool.
And
let me
of the compounding effect. Absolutely. So in that case, let's go through
let me take you through it. Okay. So what's involved when we create the end-to-end process? Now, I've already told you we need to create the strategy, and the strategy is really important because, you know, the first thing it comes down to is like, where am I going to buy? And then what am I going to buy? Now, when I say what, now obviously we know we're going to buy houses, but what kind of houses are we going to buy? Are we going to buy terrace houses? Because terrace houses are the cheapest houses on the market. For those who, I'm sure everyone knows, but for those who don't know, it's where you've got house, another house, another house, another house, another house, and they're all just stuck together. That's a terraced house. And then sometimes you have, well, not sometimes, but every time you'll have an end of terrace and an end of terrace. So you've got all these houses stuck together, and on both sides you've got end of terrace houses. But then when you say, I'm going to buy a terrace house, for example, because it's cheap, you say, well, I'm going to buy a terrace house that's street lined. That means that you come out your front door and you're on the pavement. There's no front yard, there's no front garden. So what we've done in our model is, back 10 years ago, we used to buy those because they were nice and cheap. And when I say we, I mean, I used to buy those, they were nice and cheap. But the problem is that if they're cheap, they're usually in cheap areas. And if you have cheap areas, they usually have, and I don't want to say it in the wrong way, but you have cheap tenants. You have the tenants that don't really, not the right kind of tenants that you want. But cheap tenants, unfortunately, they end up costing you more money in your time. And time is money. So what we've realized over the period of that 10 years that we've been doing this now is it's actually better to go for better quality tenants, to go for better quality properties that dictates better quality tenants, that then gives you a more hassle-free experience. And it means that you can actually get the recurring income that you want, the recurring revenue that you want. With cheap areas and cheap properties, sometimes what happens is on paper, it looks really good. Oh, they're going to give me £700 rent. But then if they don't pay, now there's a whole process of having to evict them and all this kind of stuff, and it sometimes can go wrong. So we've got to create the strategy about exactly what it is, what we're buying, in which area, how much we're going to spend on it, how much we're going to spend on the refurb, who we're going to rent it to, who we're going to rent it through, and also the mortgage elements and all of that kind of stuff. Here we go. Right property, right area, right price, and right tenants. That's what we're really looking for. The next thing is then we've got to find the property. And like I said, finding the property is tricky because, yes, you can just go onto Rightmove and find the property. That's one way of doing it. You can go to the auctions and find the property. Although, caveat with the auctions, two caveats. One is when people can't sell it on the normal market, thumbs up. When people can't sell it on the normal market, that's when they sort of go, oh, let's jack it in the auction because some unsuspecting buyer might buy it. So there's a great phrase in auctions that says caveat emptor, which means like buyer beware. You need to go and do your own due diligence to make sure that what you're buying is actually what you're buying. I have known a guy many years ago, he thought he was buying a property, this property here, when he actually bid on it and he got it. He was wondering why no one else is bidding for it. Is because it wasn't the whole property. They showed the whole property, but it was only this part of it in the title. So you've got to be really, really careful. Anyway, we've got to find the properties. We've got estate agents. We've got Rightmove, Zoopla on the market. Those kind of places. We've got the auctions. We've got off-market properties, which is like, for example, whether the estate agent comes to you directly or whether you get them from other investors, other friends, or whatever it might be, other people in the area that go around and they go, oh, that property. I don't know what's going on over there. Let me go knock on the door. Or they live in that area and they realize, oh, no one's been living there for a while. So they approach the vendor and they say, hey, can we buy your property? And they say, oh, yeah, I don't actually even live there. So I'll give you an example where that would be useful is, let's say, for example, you've got someone that's died in a property and their kids, there's 3 kids and they all live somewhere else. And so they never get a chance to meet up and discuss what to do. And even when they do, they're arguing about how much to sell it for and all that kind of stuff. And in the end, it's just lying there for months. And it's probably costing them money because they're going to pay council tax and they're going to pay all these other costs and etc. And they've got to send someone around to check to make sure it's not been burgled and all that kind of stuff. And by the end of it, they just want to get rid of it. So that's where some of those kind of properties come in. So there's lots of different ways of finding properties. We then have to view the property. Once we've found the property, we need to go to the property. And this is the most difficult part for most people. I mean, finding the property is, you can find them, let's say, on Rightmove if you really wanted to. And of course, you need to know what you're looking out for. But then you need to go and view the property. And for a lot of our clients who are Southern-based or who are based in as expats abroad, they cannot, fly over to view a property. And in fact, what I used to do when I first started was I was based in London. The properties were in Leeds. I used to spend a lot of admin time preparing a diary of back-to-back viewings. It was usually on a Wednesday and a Thursday, and I would either drive up from London, take 3.5 hours to get to Leeds, do back-to-back viewings as many as I could, don't have time for lunch, and then have dinner in the evening, wake up the next day, do back-to-back viewings again, and then come back. Or what I then started doing was I started taking a train up and then hiring a car and then doing the same process again. So there's a lot of stuff you've got to do. And of course, when you're doing these properties as well, Dipesh, you've got to know what you're looking for.
Absolutely.
It's not just a case of like, well, let's just go to this property and yeah, it looks all right. What are you looking at? You don't know what you're looking at. In ours, and I'll give you a brief of this. In fact, if you want to know more, if you go to our YouTube channel and you type in, what to look at when you're viewing a property or something along those kind of lines, then you'll find 3 videos that I've made that tells you exactly what to look for from the internal, the external, and then from the structure of the property. But here's the 4 most important things that we're looking at. These are the 4 things that are going to cost you the most amount of money to fix if you get them wrong. Okay, really, really important. Number 1, the gas connection, all the gas appliances. So we're looking at the appliances and the boiler and the radiator system and all of that kind of stuff. So gas orientated stuff. The electrics is the second one. The electrics, we're obviously looking at the fuse board, which people can see. We need to make sure it's a metal fuse board because that's what's required these days. But also we're looking at the light switches and sockets and the light fittings themselves, because are they old? Are they too old? Are they a fire risk? Are they standing up to the current regulations for renting out properties? For example, in bathrooms, you need to have IP-rated spotlights. You can't just have normal spotlights. So all of these things need to be taken into account. Those two things. The third thing is damp. Really, really important. We always want to know, is there damp in the property? Damp is something that is persistent in these properties that we buy in the north because it can be persistent in the properties that we buy in the north because they were all built in the same sort of location. And so you can get multiple different types of damp as well. You can get damp ingress through like water coming in from the gutters or something like that. You can damp coming through down the chimney breast. You can get damp coming in through the roof, but you can also get damp coming in through the mortar of the bricks. And lastly, you can get rising damp that comes from underneath the house. Lots of different types of damp. We need to identify which type of damp it is, if there is damp, how to identify damp in the first place, a damp detector if you don't have one, and then how do you resolve that? Like, how much is it going to be to resolve that? And the fourth thing that you need to look out for in a property is the roof. The roof structure. Most people know if you replace a roof, it's a lot of money. It's a huge amount of money. So you want to make sure that the roof structure is at the very least it looks sturdy. And yes, we have multiple sort of partners once we've agreed to buy the property that can kind of go and do some of these bits. But at the end of the day, you're the one that's going to have to make a decision. So when we view the property, what we're ultimately looking for is how much is the refurb going to be to get this property up to spec. That's what we're looking for. We're then going to obviously appraise the property. We're going to have some sort of deal appraisal spreadsheet type thing that's going to help us put the numbers in. What's the asking price? How much can we actually buy it for? What's the refurb? What's all the fees going to be? The stamp duty, all of that kind of stuff. And therefore, is it worth us buying or not? If you go back to, I think 3 Facebook Lives ago, we've shown you our deal appraisal spreadsheet, our property appraisal spreadsheet that helps you to work out all of these numbers. And basically at the bottom, if it goes green, because we've set ourselves some criteria. If it goes green, we should buy it. If it goes red, we shouldn't buy it. So we then need to appraise the property. And of course, when you're appraising the property, you need to know what to look out for when you're appraising the property. It's not just the numbers. The financials could look good, but there's a lot of things outside of that we need to be aware of. Once we've appraised the property and we say, yes, this is the property we want to buy, we then need to go and negotiate the purchase price with whether it's the agent or the auction house or whoever it is. Top tip on auctions, by the way, in case you are buying through auctions, is you need to buy before auction or after auction. Don't buy in the auction. This is stupid. So just a side point there. But negotiating purchase prices. Here's another great top tip. Guess who's going to give you the best price for the house? Your best friend. So what we do at Lifestyle Property People is we try and make the agents our best friends. Because if they're our best friends, when we go to negotiate purchase prices with them, they're just going to give us the inside scoop. They're just going to tell us, look, this is how much it's on the market for. This is how much you need to bid in order to get it. The vendor's really looking for this kind of value, but I think he'll probably take this kind of value. By the way, I know we didn't take pictures of it, but did you see that thing in the ceiling? Oh, no, I didn't see that thing. Oh, good. Make us aware of all of these things that we need to take into account, because then it means that we know and we're negotiating the right price. And here's what I want you guys to think about if you're watching this. If you're watching this and you're not based in the area that you're investing in, let's say you're based in London, you're trying to invest in Leeds like I was when I first started. I come up once every so often, I view a property, I try and negotiate, I offer on the property once I've done my numbers. And the agent has never seen me before, there's no idea who I am. Like, what's the chances they're even going to consider my offer? They're even going to bother. Legally, they've got to put it through to the vendor, the person that's selling the house. Do they bother? Who knows? All I know is that with our offers, because they know us, because we're their friends, and I told you in one of these Facebook Lives why we're their friends. We're their friends because we take them cakes. Sounds crazy, but you take them Mr. Kipling cakes and everyone becomes your friend. We start to build that relationship with our agents. That means that we get the deals before they go onto the market sometimes. And also it means that when we go to negotiate the price, they can just tell us what the numbers are going to be. And here's the best bit. They can tell us what the numbers are going to be. And then when you have an estate agent, and people that are watching this who have sold their house, you'll know that if the estate agent came to you and said, there's actually, with this great news, we've got 3 offers in the house. We've got an offer of, for example, £150,000, £153,000 and £154,000. Which one do you want to go for? Usually you'll go, oh yeah, that's interesting. But I don't know, because I don't know who the people are. I just know the numbers. And of course, if you ask me to go on the numbers, I'll just go for the highest number. So the agent would say, just before you make your decision, I want you to know 154, never even seen this guy. 153, we've seen this guy, he's never bought anything from us, but we've seen him once or twice. The 150, who is less, they buy property from us every single day of the week. They complete on pretty much every single property that they say, and so there's certainty that your house is going to get sold. This is the timeline that they stick to. We've got their details. They're NRLA regulated. They're part of the PRS. All of these kind of regulatory bodies, the ombudsman, etc. They're a professional company. Here's their website. Guess who you're going for? You're going for the person that the agent has recommended that you go for, because just like your accountant, when your accountant tells you to jump, you normally say, how high? Tell me where to jump. So same thing with your estate agent, because you're not an expert in selling houses. They are an expert, or at least you perceive them to be an expert. And at the very least, they have met the people that are buying. You've never met the people that are buying. So then at that point, they can advise you. And a lot of the time they say, look, we've worked with these guys, lifestyle property people. They've bought over 350 properties in this area. They've bought over, 50, 70 properties from our branch, our agency alone. And we know that they always do them. And then, maybe it's the case that we also rent them through them as well. So negotiate the purchase price. Once we've done that,
Before we go on to that next step, Shiv, you can leave it on there though. One thing I would stress for everyone watching this, between step 4 and 5, one of the things that we do is we'll go and appraise a property. So we'll give you the numbers that we know is achievable based on what the property is valued at in that moment. So when we're sending you a deal that's been appraised, that's a minimum case scenario of what you can expect from that property.
yes.
Then once you're happy with the minimum case scenario, we go to step 5 and we come in, essentially blow our own figures out the water and make them that much better. That's our goal here. So we want to show you what's possible at the minimum case scenario. And then we go and add our value because of what Shiv was just talking about in terms of the relationships we have, the level of certainty we give to the agents in terms of our ability to complete on a purchase without any issues, which is why we get so many great deals coming our way. And for example, if you see something that we've appraised at 6%, it's going to be our goal that when we go to step 5 and negotiate, that when we come back to you with the negotiated final value, that 6% is going to be much higher. And that's essentially what we're here to do. So, Shiv, I know we've got 26 minutes to go through the rest. So let's go through.
And just on that point, so it's because we're an under promise, over deliver company. And I say to people all the time, because it's a useful analogy, people who understand cars will get this analogy. We promise people a VW Passat, and then we aim to give them an Audi A4. And the difference is that when you get a VW Passat, if you go into a Passat showroom or a VW showroom and you say, I want to buy that, and they say, yeah, it's 50 grand or whatever, and you say, here's my 50 grand, thanks very much. And they say, yeah, come back next week and you can pick it up. When you come back next week and you get your Passat, you go, oh, wow, this is a really nice car. Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much for the service. You've been really great. And you drive it off the showroom and you say, yeah, perfect. I've got a new car. Feel good. When you go in to buy a VW Passat, but the next week when you come back, they give you an Audi A4. And the reason why I say people who understand cars will understand this analogy is because it's the same car underneath. One just has an Audi badge and looks nicer and is F-line and all the cool extra features. When it's an Audi S4, but you actually paid for a Passat, then you sit there and go, oh, not only am I so excited about this, but can you take a picture of me with the Audi? Because I want to send it to all my friends and be like, these guys are really good. Like, I paid for a Passat and they gave me an Audi A4. So that's what we try to do, is we try to say, how can we, when you said, Dipesh, about exceeding our own expectations, about blowing our own numbers out of the water. And something to know is that on every single property that we've ever done, we've always exceeded our numbers. We've never not exceeded our numbers. Okay, so that's really, really important to know. I'll whiz through some of these as well. So provide purchase documents. We know we need to provide purchase documents. What are these? Your passport, your proof of address, your proof of funds, your mortgage decision in principle. All of this information is required, and we always get this information up front before we even go and look for a property for you, so that when we get a good property, we can negotiate it and get it off the market straight away. In case you don't know, until you provide these documents, the estate agent does not take your property off the market. That means someone else can come along and gazump you. And people who live in London especially will know about gazumping. Once you've provided purchase documents to the estate agent, you then need to instruct the purchasing team. Who's the purchasing team? I told you, it's the solicitor. the mortgage advisor, the insurance broker, the surveyor, the project manager. All of these people need to be instructed to say, go and do the specific bit that I'm asking you to do. And in our company, what we do is we do them kind of a little bit sequentially, because we say, well, there's no point in getting the solicitor involved if we haven't yet got the mortgage, or if we don't know 100% we get the mortgage, because otherwise that person's going to now start charging us money when we haven't even got this bit sorted. So we kind of do it sequentially, but we have a good idea of what we're doing, and we've done this before. Solicitor, mortgage broker, surveyor, insurance broker. We then progress to completion. Now, between stage 7 and stage 7, right? You can see the 2 sevens on my screen. Between stage 7 and stage 7, there's a 4-month process, right? I said this is the due diligence process. It takes 4 months. I've cut it all down into one number, basically 7. But once you've done all that due diligence, and there is 4 months of it, in fact, I'll just talk very briefly through it. The solicitor has to engage the client. Once they've engaged the client, they have to do the initial query, the title check that the title is correct. Then they've got to do the initial queries to the seller. Once they've done that, they go back and forth and they answer some questions. They get the searches done. So the searches are, they send to the council to get all the information about the property, and they review all of those searches and they raise inquiries on those searches to make sure that all of that information is correct. Once they've done all of that stuff, they then write you a report. A report is probably like 50 pages long, and you've got to read through all of it to decipher whether this is a good property for you to buy or not. What we do is, because the fact of the matter is, I don't know what I'm looking at. There's 50 pages of gobbledygook. We call the agent, we call the solicitor and say, so did you find anything? Like, can we go ahead with this property? And they go, yeah. Well, what was the 50 pages for? Oh, well, it's just boilerplate. We've got to put some of this stuff in there because, otherwise you're not going to pay us £2,000 for, yes, you're going to pay us £2,000 for a 50-page document. So that's from a legal perspective. Then we exchange, then we complete on the property. From a mortgage perspective, we've got to instruct the mortgage advisor. Then they've got to fill out the application. Once we submit the application, we then have to get the surveyor out to go and value the property. Once the surveyor, this is the mortgage surveyor. Once the surveyor has been out to value the property, the mortgage company can then offer. Once the offer has been out, then they can send it over to the solicitor, and the solicitor can then exchange complete on the property. Then we have our surveyor, our independent surveyor. The bank surveyor is just looking at whether the house is worth a certain amount of money. And if you're buying a house for £100,000, all the bank really cares about, because they're giving you £75,000, is whether the house is worth £75,000. And of course, generally speaking, the house is going to be worth at least 75 grand. So the surveyor goes in pretty much with his eyes closed and goes, yeah, I know a house here is worth 75 grand. And they go out the property and they don't look at anything else. Our surveyor, like a building surveyor, goes into the property and they look much more keenly with their eyes to say, what's wrong with this property? And they help us to create the schedule of works along with our project manager to say what needs to be done, what works need to be done. This is before we've completed on the property. Again, our project manager also goes into the property and creates that schedule of works with the surveyor. And then we have finally the insurance broker, who needs to ultimately go to the property and make sure to get the insurance quote. Then we can exchange, then we can complete. Right. Then we collect the keys from the agent. Once we've progressed to completion, we need to transfer the funds to the solicitor. Then we can complete on the property. Complete means you actually get the keys. We then have to collect the keys from the estate agent, which could be based anywhere. Then we have to visit the property, and this is really important. On that day, we've got to get meter readings. Why? Just like when you moved out of your own house, we've got to say, well, until that day, the old seller or the seller was responsible. From this day onwards, I'm now responsible for any gas, electric, council tax, etc. We then need to switch the utilities to the owner. And for anyone that's ever done this, you'll know this is probably the hardest part of the entire process. Staying on the phone to British Gas, E.ON, whoever it is, for an hour for electric, and then they hang up on you and you've got to call them up again for another hour. Likewise with the gas, likewise with the water company for the council tax. You've got to do it for all of those utility providers, gas, electric, water, council tax, and then once obviously we've done that, we then go back into the property. Once we've completed it, we do a complete schedule of work. So we did a schedule of works, a rough schedule of works before we completed to say, is the budget enough? But then we went back to the property and we created a final schedule of works to say, now that the person who was living here has moved out and they've moved all their rubbish out, what else can we see? How can we make sure that this is sorted? Then we need to find and vet the build team, obviously. And anyone that's doing this will have to, everyone says to me, oh, well, can I just buy a property and not have to do any refurb? You can, but like there's probably something you have to do, even if it's just a gas certificate and an electrical test report. There is something that you're going to have to do to the property. So it's worthwhile making sure that you've got this and realizing that even if you manage to find the property and buy the property, you still then have to do some refurb, and managing contractors when you're 200 miles away or 400 miles away is really, really difficult. This is the builder, the electrician, the plumber, the joiner. This is just to name a few. Obviously, you have the gas guy and all the rest of it as well, roofer, etc. We get refurbishment quotes. We get multiple refurbishment quotes. Once we've got that, and obviously in our company, we use the same teams over and over again because we know what they're like. Like, we have trust built up. We have a set schedule of work in terms of the pricing. We then create and sign the works contract. Once you've done that, you've got to instruct the build team. Okay, you officially can go and do this job. Here's the start date. Here's the end date. Here's the payment schedule. Here's what's going to happen in the meantime. Once you've done that, and by the way, all of that stuff that I've just said there, the start date, end date, contract, payment schedule, most people don't have any of this. Most people say, oh yeah, email that says it's going to be 10 grand, or a phone call that says it's going to be 10 grand. Right, crack on and do the work. What happens if they don't do the work? How many stories have you heard, Dipesh, of what they call rogue traders? Oh, I paid this guy this much money and he ran off with my money.
I mean, you don't just hear it about builds, but you hear it about people getting work done in their own homes just for
100%.
simple things like getting a toilet fixed or a plumbing issue or whatever, where someone's been instructed to come and do something. They come around, they give a quote, they get paid a portion, a percentage of
25% to go and get the materials or whatever.
25 to 50%, depending on what they're doing. And all of a sudden, it's been 3 weeks and you still have the same issue.
Or even worse than that, you've paid them 90% of the work, the money, they've done 75% of the works. Yeah. And this is the typical thing with builders, is by the time they get to the last 25% of your job, they're already looking for the next job. So they're now no longer on, and it takes them, 3 weeks to do 75%. You'd think you'd take them 1 more week to do the final bit, but it then takes them 3 months to do the final bit. So obviously, when we work with our teams, the teams that we work with over and over again, we effectively know them. We've used them before. We know the quality of their work. We know the pricing of their work. We know that because we've used them and we use them, continue to use them, that means that when we call, they're going to come because they know they're going to get more work from us tomorrow. And if they don't come, they're not going to get any more work from us. So there is a little bit of leverage, let's say, that we have there. We then have to manage the refurbishment works, obviously. Now, it might take 3 weeks, or it might take 3 months. The point is, someone's got to be there every single week checking, has the work been done? Because if there's a payment schedule that says you've got to pay when this has been done, some people think, oh, well, I'll just get the builder to send me the picture. Listen, builders will go to another property, take a picture and send it to you and say the work's been done. So I'm not saying that about all builders. I'm just saying you've got to be really careful. If you've never met the builder, if you don't know a reputable builder, there are builders out there that do that. This is an important bit. Create and complete a snaggings list. A snaggings list. Anyone know what a snaggings list is?
I know what it is, but I want to see, is anyone who's live, do they know what a snagging list is?
Snagging list.
Yeah, but I'll let you start. When
you put people into a bag and you snag them. No, so a snagging list. So you're going through the refurb, right? And you've done the whole refurb and everything looks okay. But then someone, and guess what? This is not going to be the builder. Someone needs to walk around the entire property and say, oh, door stop missing there. Oh, this window is a bit hard to close. Can we fix that as well? Oh, this tap doesn't seem to be running. Or it's really, hard to open or hard to close or whatever. Or there's a leak over there. I can see that. There's a hole over here. This plug socket isn't working. All these little bits, someone needs to go around and test everything. And we have I believe off the top of my head, if I can remember correctly, it's a 127-point snaggings list. 127 points. That means someone goes into every single property and checks 127 things in that property to make sure that everything is done up to our standard before we then hand it over to a management agent. The next one is then.
One quick thing to add on the snagging list is when we finish with a property, it is ready for someone to move in. And that's the importance of step 18 there. It's being able to make sure that we have a team in place that when they've done the build work and all of it, not just is everything working, but is it in a condition for someone to move in, or is it full of things that still need to be tidied up? Because, and this isn't to say anything negative about builders, but builders aren't there to tidy up the property. They're there to build the property and refurb
exactly.
It's done.
And they'll clean it. There's a thing called builder's clean. Yes. That's not clean.
Correct. A builder's clean still has dust everywhere because that's not what their job is, right? And this is why this step is so important, because it means we check that off our list, but it means that the property is ready to rent. So when we finish with that property, it's ready for someone to move in and it doesn't need anything else to be done to it. So
And
that's
when you
just
say ready to rent, important thing as well, it's not just the property is ready to rent, but it has all the necessary certificates and everything like that. So it is ready to rent. That's also important. The reason why that's important is because the builder will say, yeah, the gas certificate's been done. Right, where is it? Oh, I need to chase my gas guy for it. Well, then it's not, I can't rent the property until the gas certificate's here. Like you literally legally are not allowed to rent the property until you have the gas, until you can give the gas certificate to the tenant. So really, really important bits over there. Obviously, then we've got to find and vet the tenants. And this is a really hard thing to do because we want to find the best possible tenants. And it's really important that we know what we're not looking for is how do we find the first tenants to put them in the house. We're saying we want to find the best tenants because what people don't realize, and people sometimes find out the hard way, and there's no easy way to do this, but setting up the investment, setting up the buy-to-let property is probably half of the job. If you're going to keep it for 10 years, wouldn't it be so much easier if you found a really good tenant that stayed for 5 or 10 years and not really cause you much hassle? Or you could have someone that stays for 6 months and they cause a bunch of havoc in the property, and then in 6 months' time you've got to go and paint the wall again, and another 6 months, another 12 months you've got to paint the wall again, and then they break something. Constant issues with the property, constant maintenance issues that you've got to keep funding. It's really important that we vet the tenants and effectively choose the right tenants. So price is one of the things that we have to look at, as in what's the rent that they're willing to pay. Because in case people don't know, whilst we say we want to rent it at, for example, £850, what we tend to do is to get at least 2 or 3 people who want to pay £850, and then we'll go to them and say, well, will you pay 875? Will you pay 875? Will you pay 900? What will you pay? So we try to get the price up, but then we also want to make sure the package is correct. So the price is there, employment status, what kind of tenants are there, why they're moving, does their story stack up? There's a whole bunch of stuff that goes into making sure we find and vet the right tenants. Obviously, once we found them and they're ready to go ahead, they then need to sign the tenancy agreement. And ultimately, before we can hand it over, we need to meet the tenants at the property, hand over all of the documentation that we need to hand over, so that legally we can say we've done that. It's signed off. They sign off. Yes, I've received this information. And the reason why that's important is because here's a little thing that people don't know. If you don't do that last step, you cannot evict these tenants ever. It gets very, very difficult to evict tenants and it's very costly. So what we really want to do is we want to make sure we do that last step. Every single one of these steps is really important, and it can be costly if you don't do it. So that's that one. We're nearly at number 26. Number 24, carry out property inspection. This is when we meet them at the property, we go around the property, right? Let's do the inventory to make sure that the property is as we have scheduled it to be. If there's anything missing or anything broken, we know now, so that at the end of the when you give the property back, if you say, "Oh, that was broken when I moved in," we say, "No, look, here's the inventory." Switch the utilities to tenant, again, really important, because we've got to say until that day it was my responsibility. From this day onwards, it's the tenant's responsibility. And the final one is confirm that the rent has been paid. Really, obviously, the most important thing is let's make sure the rent's been paid. So you can see here, now we've said 26, but I've counted number 7 twice. So there's actually 27 points in this spreadsheet, in this thing.
We'll call step number 26 a bonus step number 27.
Bonus. Exactly.
Rental payment. Shiv, okay, so that is a full-on process. Just to give context to the 27 steps that are there, how much time does that take end to end? So from step 1 to step 27, what is that timeline?
Yeah, really, really great thing. So if we cut out step 1, because creating a strategy, that could take as long as it takes, right? If we go from finding the property until confirming that the rent's been received, I'll talk you through our timeline just in months so that we can get an idea. We take, and this depends on the client, but it's probably a month or so to onboard the client. Onboard the client means help them understand what to expect, set up all the bits for them, get them to sign the right documents, etc., collect their documents from them, and get a mortgage decision in principle. So all of that is step 1, onboarding. Then we source a property for them. Usually it takes us about 4 weeks or so to source a property. Obviously, if we're buying 3 properties, we don't want to find 3 on the same road. We want to find a bit of a diversification, so it could take a little bit longer. It then takes us 3 to 4 months to purchase the properties. And like I said to you, that is the due diligence phase. It then takes us a month-ish to refurbish it, let's say 6 weeks, and then another month-ish, let's say 6 weeks, to then rent it as well. And that's when the tenant has moved in. So we've got 6 weeks or 6 weeks, that's 3 months, plus the 3 months for due diligence, that's 6 months, plus the month and the month, that's 8 months. So total end-to-end is about 8 months of elapsed time for us to go from I want a property to I've got property and rent has now come in. As well as that, though, we need to talk about, well, how long does each of these processes take? Because difference, there's 14 people in our team. No one's
Exactly.
sitting around twiddling their thumbs. These are 14 people that are here for a long time doing all of these different bits for all these properties. And I think we calculated, and I know this is a rough number, but it was somewhere like 96 hours of effort goes into it per property. And remember that some of these hours are, this is an underestimate because we do so many properties. So there's a bit of economies of scale. If we were doing one property, it'd probably be more like 140 hours of time that goes into doing this entire end-to-end process. And of course, time is money at the end of the day.
Absolutely. And I think that's the point about us being so transparent to share this information with you guys. Because look, there's going to be some of you watching this who absolutely have all the time in the world to go and do this process, which is amazing. Like, this is our blueprint. Essentially, these are our 26 steps. By all means, if you have the time, if you have the energy, and if you've got the knowledge and the know-how, use this the next time you're going to look for your next buy-to-let property, because we've done this over now 400 and is it 400?
Something like that, yeah. And on that point, Dipesh, remember when I started, I didn't know any of this stuff.
Exactly.
I literally started buying houses. I came up with this process, by making all the mistakes. And now that we have it, if you wanted to go and do this yourself, which is what I had to do because there was no one else that could help me do it, take this, go and do it yourself.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And you're utilizing Shiv's and the team's experience over the last decade to know that this process works end to end. We've done 400 plus units. This works. Now, if you don't have that time, Shiv,
well, it's time, knowledge, relationships, expertise. If you're some people, and this was me when I started, you're scared of making a mistake because mistakes in property can be tens, if not hundreds of thousands of pounds. And I'd rather just go, so it's not just time, there's a whole bunch of things that you may not have. And if you are in that position, this is, I think, what you're trying to get onto, Dipesh. If you are in that position and you then decide to use a company like ours to say, look, at least for the first one or the first couple, I'm just going to use a company because they know what they're doing and they know how to get this sort of thing sorted and it doesn't require any of my time, then here are the steps that you need to do. Okay, so instead of the 26, 27 steps that are here, you need to do step number 6, provide the purchase document. You need to do step number 8, which is transfer funds to this solicitor, because obviously, unfortunately, I don't have access to your bank account. And then step number...
Before you finish off on that one, step number 8 there, which is transferring funds to the solicitors, just to make it clear for everyone, we're buying the property on your behalf. So you are not transferring the funds to us to then go and buy the property. You are transferring the funds to the solicitor because you're the one buying the property, whether it's in your personal name, it's going to the solicitors for the purpose of the completion and exchange, not to us. And I think that's a key distinction there. So you're there as an agent working on your behalf, but you are buying the property.
And the reason why that's an important distinction is because how many times have you heard of people that gave their money and got scammed? In fact, the answer to that is probably not that many, because people who get scammed don't want to tell people about it. Obviously, you feel ashamed, you feel embarrassed. I've heard these stories anecdotally throughout the property community, throughout the investment community, forget the property community. We won't obviously mention names, Dipesh, but you had a call very recently.
Very, very recently, literally. And unfortunately, they're not the only ones that have gone through this process, but we've got clients who have been, unfortunately, scammed previously with putting in not small sum of money. We're talking 100K upwards of putting funds into a supposedly safe investment and scheme, correct? And unfortunately, losing every single penny. And the chance of them recovering anything, I mean, you're talking 100K upwards in terms of what was invested, you're probably looking at getting a return of maybe £2,000 as compensation, which is nothing compared to what was invested.
Well, it's first of all, it's years of saving that has given you that 100K, first of all. So it's years of hard work that's got you there. And then secondly, again, if you go back 4 episodes of this Facebook Live, we talk about how I lost money in the same way. And it was because I went into something that I believed was too good to be true, but I was like, that's the way it is. And I put, if you remember, 450 grand in, which is a huge sum of money. I got six grand out as compensation from the 450. So really completely nothing. But the point is, the funds go from your bank account to the solicitor's bank account. And the solicitors on the SRA, the Solicitors Regulation Authority, they're official solicitors. If you don't like them, we use multiple partners. We've got other solicitors that we can use as well. Solicitors, we haven't even mentioned on here, the solicitors need to be on the lender panel. So there's a load of other steps that go into it that I haven't really gone into too much detail because we don't have enough time. But yeah, the money goes from your account into the solicitor's account for buying the property. Obviously, when it comes to doing the refurb, it will go into the refurb account so that we can actually send it to project managers that can do their work. And of course, the various fees will be paid to the various individuals. So our fee will be paid to us, the mortgage broker's fees will be paid to the mortgage broker, the insurance fees will be paid to the insurance company. And then the final step in all of this is to confirm that you've received rent. And this is the best day, because this is when you know, out of everything that you've just spent ages doing, this 8-month process. And by the way, 8-month process, which we try to make as smooth as possible, but behind the scenes, there's loads of stuff going on. There's loads of things going wrong, whatever. We've done this for so many years. We know how to solve all of these problems, and we can solve them. As long as you let us to get on and solve them, we can solve them without even, honestly, your involvement. But step number 6, you go, I worked for 8 months and now it's all paid off and there's money coming to my account and it comes in every single month and I don't need to touch it. I don't need to worry about it. And if I can make that pie big enough, I don't need to work. I can create generational wealth, money that comes in every single month without me having to do anything for it.
That is everything. So Shiv, thank you so much for taking the time to share that process. It's been incredibly insightful. I hope that everyone watching has found value in some way or form. Value in the form of, if you've got the time and energy that you want to go and do this yourself and you want to use our expertise and knowledge and what Shiv and the team have created over the last decade, then you've got everything there. Literally a step-by-step guide on what we do. And if you don't have the time, the knowledge, the expertise, the contacts, that's what we're here for. That is exactly what we are here to do. So yes, you have an involvement, of course, because it's your property. But in terms of your time, you need to do 3 things, which is send over your documents, because I'd be worried if we had those in the first place. We need to get you to transfer the funds to the solicitors so that you can buy the property and it's going to be transferred into your name. And then the last thing, which is the greatest thing, let us know when you're getting paid. And that, my friends, is our end-to-end process at Lifestyle Property People. I am going to drop a link to our website on the Facebook Live. So if anyone watching this is interested in working with us, then feel free to book a call from the website and you'll either speak to myself or one of the team and we will go through what your requirements are. We'll just get to understand what it is you're looking to achieve, how much you're looking to invest, and see if we are the right people to help you. And if we are, then we will help you create some enormous wealth over the next decade and more, not just for yourself, but generations to come. So guys, this is Depesh and Shiv on the Property Perspective. This is episode 5 now, right? Episode 5?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
We'll start these episodes from now on. So yeah, episode 5. Thank you all so much for your time and have an amazing rest of your week. We look forward to speaking to you and we will see you on the next one.
See you soon, guys. Bye-bye.